Hi class, this is your instructor, Miss Caitlin. I'm going to go ahead and give you a tutorial on how to do a ball bounce animation using a Motion-Tween. This is an acceptable option, and I think it is easier for students, as well as using curves using arcs is a bit more professional way of going about it as well. So we're going to start by opening up Animate and then creating a new file. Within this new file, the preset doesn't necessarily matter so much because you can edit it. So I'm going to go with the basic HD. Make sure your frame rate is either 24 or 30, and the platform type is about your interactivity. Since we're not doing any buttons or any interactivity in this project, in this assignment, it's not a big deal which one, but HTML5 canvas is required for your final project, so it's a good habit to go ahead and select that one. Click Create. And just like in the last tutorial, you have different windows you can move around. This is how I currently have mine set up. If you want to go to a different workspace, you can go here. You could also move your timeline to different areas of your screen by clicking and dragging the word, the title, and then waiting for it to turn blue in the section that you want it to go to. So I prefer mine down here next to the output data. Alright, to get started, you're going to make a ground line. So let's drag that in, click Shift to make it snap to horizontal. Right now mine's a little semi-transparent, so I'm going to go ahead and click to go to my properties and edit this here. I could edit the stroke, which is the size of the line, the opacity, which I'm going to set to 100, so it's fully opaque. And then I'm going to create, well, first I'm going to label it, then create another layer. I'm going to call this ball. And let's create our ball. So anything with a triangle in the corner like that has more options. To get to them, you can right click and then select what you want. We're going to use the oval tool to drag an oval. I currently have a gradient already set. So let's get this, hold Shift to get a perfect circle. And I want to delete that. To make the gradient, what you're going to do is in your color options under properties, you're going to select this option and then go to your color menu. If it's not here, it might be here. You could also find it in this drop down. You're going to choose what color it's going to start and end with. So I'm going to start with a yellow and end with a reddish color, something like that. And then if I want to change where that highlight is, the color bucket tool, paint bucket tool, will center that highlight wherever you click. So let's just add it about there. It's a little more natural not having it right in the middle. So we have a ball. It is currently an editable vector. You can see that because if I hover around the edge, get that curved icon, and I can manipulate the shape. I don't want to be able to manipulate like that, and I want to be able to add a tween to it. So let's go ahead and select it, right click, and let's convert to symbol. So label it. I like to also add a suffix for the type of symbol, which is going to be a graphic symbol. This is a requirement. Technically movie clips work for this as well, but this is really for graphics. There is videos in the announcements about the different types of symbols and the use cases for each. So once you have it set, you're going to click OK. This makes a symbol, and symbols automatically show up in your library. Alright, let's get started here. So you can use a guide, or you can kind of give a general idea of how you want this to work. So let's start off with making your own guide. So I'm just going to duplicate this ground layer, hide that, and I want to use that same curve editor to make different arcs to show where I want them to bounce. So let's divide this arc out because we don't want one big bump, we want a bunch of little ones. And the easiest way to do that is actually just by breaking it up. So adding a line to change it will allow you to have a point there. So we can also grab the end where it has that corner icon and drag it where you want, and just figure out how this arc is going to go. So there's one bounce, maybe there's two, three. You need to have 5, so it's good to get it planned out so you can fit it all. 4. I'm not using hotkeys so you can see what I'm doing. So that's kind of how you can plan it out. Again, there's the ground line still. You can also use a picture. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that and find one real quick. Alright, I pulled one from the internet. I actually have it listed in the announcements at the bottom as an example to use. It's the heavy and light ball bounce timing video. It's very short, kind of shows natural arcs and movements based on physics. But let's get that in there. So let's make a new layer, paste, and center. And here's the picture. So let's see what we want here. I want it below the ground layer, so drag it there. And let's edit the size. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ends about here. So let's just hold shift, make this a little bigger. There we go. That's about right. And you can cut off the sides by this icon. So we're going to use this as a guide. And this guide even has timing options. So we're going to use that. So let's get started. And if you want this to be more transparent, I'm going to call this reference. Using reference is always preferred in animating. I'm going to decrease the opacity just to make it a little less obnoxious. There we go. And then I'm also going to lock it and the ground layer. Alright, so our ball, now we know, is going to start right about there. And then at about 7 seconds, you see that there at the bottom. So 5, 6, 7. We're going to add a keyframe, and it's going to end up there. Except now everything is disappeared because at frame 7, these two layers don't exist anymore. There's no keyframe, it's just nothing shown on screen. We want these to last a little longer, so we know our animation is going to last till about 48 frames or so, so let's just make them last a little longer. We can edit this later. But now they just don't disappear on us. So let's get rid of these. You can just remove frames. But here's a little bit better way to do it. To start with the Motion-Tween line, go ahead and right-click on this single frame after we removed, and create Motion-Tween. And let's drag this out so it lasts the same amount of time. So it starts up here out of the way, and at frame 7, there's 7, we're going to add a keyframe and move it into position. Cool thing about Motion-Tweens is you don't actually have to make a keyframe first, so it'll make one for you. Classic Tweens, you do have to do a keyframe first. So let's go to 19. Move this over. We're going to do where it hits the ground first. 30. So it's adding a keyframe. 40. And so forth. Alright, and now we're going to do those arcs, just like we did with the initial guide we made. So we're going to grab one of these areas, highlight it. If you don't see the curve showing up, you're probably on the wrong tool, so let's grab that. And you want to pull this up. This is frame 4, so I'm going to go ahead and line it up. Something like that. Again, make sure you have the curve, pull it, curve, pull it. The reason why we pull the curve is if we put the ball right there and then move it up, you get a mountain, which is not what we want. So we're going to move the ball out of the way and then you manipulate the curve by itself. So let's see what we got here. Looking pretty good. Nice and snappy. Again, you're going to need 5 bounces. I'll leave that to you to finish. But now the next step is we need to look at squash and stretch. The timing is built in here with this Motion-Tween. It is more frames at the top, so it slows at the top of each arc. You can see that. A little bit of a pause, not quite a pause, more of a floaty feeling near at the arc. And that's what we want. And then snappier at the bottom. But for the bounce, at this point in time, it should be a little bit squashed because it hit the ground with a lot of force, and this ball is a little bit malleable. And again, in animation, exaggeration is key. It helps visually impart what you're trying to show. So the wrong way to do this is to immediately go in and squash. The reason is, when you do that, it's going to go between point A and point B, and it's going to squash before it hits the ground. The ball shouldn't change shape until it hits an object. So I'm going to Control Z. So we're going to lock in this shape right before and right after. So if you insert keyframe, all here. And you want to do it for both. This doesn't keyframe all about rotation and things, so we're going to right click on the keyframe we want to adjust, insert keyframe, all. And go to the next one. This is the next bounce. I'll show you what happens if you just use this option. Okay, so all of our bounces have a set of keyframes on either side. So this one now will get squashed, and you want to stretch to keep the volumes. Sometimes you got to move it down as well. And this one remains the same shape. So let's stretch it out. Make it a little skinnier to account for that, and then rotate slightly to follow the line. Let's do the same thing, so make it a little skinnier, a little taller, and rotate slightly. So it has a nice little snappy bloop. And let's do the same thing here. This one I did not transform save all, so I'm going to go ahead and squash it, stretch it, maybe a little bit less than the first time because it is coming from a shorter distance. And here, let's do the stretch and a squeeze and a rotate. Because we didn't save all transforms, now this one's a little skewed, so we gotta rotate it back. So let's keep going. Double check we haven't messed that up. There we go. So if you don't transform all you gotta do is fix the rotation afterward. Boop. Looking nice. Now we have a problem. At the top of this arc, we have a stretch because it's going to change between this frame and this frame. So let's go undo. And let's lock it in. Remember, whenever you're changing the shape, if you want it to stay the same, you need to lock it in. So now when we stretch this one and stretch this one, it goes back to the ball shape at the top of the arc when there is the least amount of forces pressing on it. So let's see what that looks like. Very nice. Again, this is rinse and repeat, so let's do this a little nicer. So this one gets locked in. This bounce gets a frame on either side. And let's fix the rotation. Make it stretch or squash a little. And you can use your arrow keys to move that down a bit. And it just takes a little bit of manipulation. But you get a way better animation with more control with this method. Let's go ahead and loop this whole section, see what it looks like. Nice little snappy bouncing ball movement. As for exporting this, you're going to just delete that reference layer. We are not currently using anything after here, so if this was your last bounce and you have a bunch of extra, we don't want to export that. So you can just hover over everything unnecessary, right click and remove. Oh, Control Z, remove frames. There we go. Just so we have a end that makes sense. File, export, video media. Make sure it's an H.264 and it's going to send to media encoder. And it's going to take a second to send here. I think it's already done actually. Let's see what that looks like. And if it's being a little laggy, that's fine. That's just sometimes a media player. I'm just controlling the playback so you can see it a little bit better. Looks good, so you would turn in this MP4 as well as your FLA file from Animate, which is your original document where you save as from here. Hopefully that clears things up and helps you out this assignment. I recommend looking at this and the Classic Tween tutorial. Choose which one you want to do. Both options may be used in your final project depending on your story that you're trying to tell and what animations are necessary.